Love for me was always a calm and steady thing, like the ticking of a clock you could always count on. I got married young, raised our 2 kids, and put all my energy into the life we made. I never gave another man a second look or stepped off the path I believed was the correct one. I thought if you did all the right things, your world would stay solid. But I was mistaken. I never dreamed something like this would happen to me, and I hope you don't make the same error I did. I first saw the leak under our kitchen sink as just a tiny thing, only a few drops on the pipe after I'd run the dishwasher. I cleaned them up with a rag and didn't think about it again. But a couple of days later, a small puddle was spreading across the floor, wetting the edge of the rug. That's when I knew I needed some help. My husband, Greg, was away on a work trip in Chicago. I always hated it when he was gone because the house felt so much bigger and more silent, especially now with our kids grown up and living far away. I could have called a plumber, of course, but Greg always called his best friend Mike. For problems like this, he's like family, Greg would always say, and it was true. Mike had been Greg's friend since they were in college. He was at our wedding and held our first son right after he was born, so I sent him a text. "Hey Mike, I have a small leak. Any chance you could come by this week?" He answered right away. "I can be there in 20 minutes. Don't move." I didn't have a chance to think about it. I fixed my hair, glanced in the mirror to make sure I didn't look like a total mess, and tried to quiet the strange flutter in my stomach. When Mike knocked, I opened the door to see him standing there with his usual friendly smile, holding a toolbox. He looked just like he always did. Strong and a bit more gray in his hair, but he still had that quiet self-assurance that made you trust him right away. "Hey, Caroline," he said. "Let's see what's going on. Thanks for coming. Sorry to bother you." "It's no bother. It's better to fix it before you have a swimming pool in here." He got down on the floor right away, his head under the sink with a flashlight. I stood back, my arms crossed, just watching him. The house was so quiet you could hear the floorboards creak. "Looks like a loose valve," he said, his voice muffled. "Simple fix." He got a wrench and began to tighten something. I found myself looking at the back of his neck, at the little curls of hair there, and the way his shirt pulled tight across his back. I quickly looked away, feeling embarrassed at my own thoughts. What was happening to me? "You doing okay, Caroline?" he asked, looking up. Yes, I'm just tired." He sat up and wiped his hands on a cloth. "You've seemed quiet lately. Is everything all right?" The question took me by surprise. I hadn't known how long it had been since someone really asked me how I was feeling. "I'm fine," I said, but it didn't sound true even to me. He looked at me closely. "Are you sure? You look like you're carrying a heavy weight." I gave a small laugh, trying to keep my feelings down. "It's just been a weird year. The kids are gone, Greg travels more, and the house is so quiet. I can hear myself think." He didn't smile, just looked at me with those steady eyes that always made me a little nervous because they seemed to see right through me. "I know how that feels," he said softly. "After I got divorced, I used to just sit in my house at night and listen to the silence. It can get very loud." I nodded, feeling the air between us grow heavy. Not in a bad way, but in a soft, gentle way. "Do you ever feel like you're just fading away?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. Then he slowly reached out and put his hand over mine on the counter. "Only when I try to pretend I'm fine." My breath caught in my throat. His hand was warm and familiar, but it felt different this time, as if something we'd never said had just appeared between us. I should have moved my hand. I didn't. I looked down at our hands, then up at his face, and for a second, the rest of the world just disappeared. The ticking clock, the humming fridge, even the dripping sink, all went away. There was only the quiet space between us. Mike was the first to speak, his voice almost a whisper. "You don't have to pretend, Caroline. Not with me." And right. Then, my heart didn't just skip a beat, it stopped. I knew at that moment that something was changing, something I couldn't take back. I couldn't sleep that night. I just kept thinking about that moment, his hand on mine, the honesty in his eyes, and the way he said my name. Greg called later that night, and I put on my normal happy voice. "Hey, hun, how's Chicago?" "Cold, boring," he laughed. "How are things at home?" "Fine, quiet." Mike came by to fix the sink. "Good man," Greg said, not giving it a second thought. "I told you he'd handle it." Yes, he did, in more ways than one. After we hung up, I stood at the sink, wiping the dry counter and trying to calm down. I wasn't sure what I felt. Maybe guilt, but it was something else too. It was the feeling that someone had truly seen me, not as a wife or a mom, but just as Caroline. The next morning, I tried to push it all away. I stayed busy, walking the dog, going to the store, and cleaning. But my mind kept going back to that kitchen. He texted me first. "Hey, you okay?" Just those 3 words felt huge. I stared at the screen for a long time before I typed back. "I don't know, maybe. Can we talk?" He came over that afternoon without his toolbox this time. He looked different, or maybe I was just seeing him in a new way. I made us tea and we sat on the back porch as the sun went down. The air was cool and smelled like dry leaves. "I didn't mean to cross a line," he said. "I just saw something in your eyes, Carolyn, that I recognized." I nodded. "You didn't cross a line. Or maybe you did, but I let you." We were quiet again. The kind of comfortable quiet that feels like a warm blanket. "I've been lonely," I said after a bit. Not sad really, but just fading. Like I'm watching my life from behind a window. He looked at me and said, "I think we both have." It was comforting to know I wasn't the only one feeling lost in my own life, but it was also dangerous. "I don't want to mess anything up," I said. Quietly, "My life might not be exciting, but it's safe." "Yeah," he said. "But sometimes safe can feel like a trap." I really looked at him then. I saw sadness and maybe longing in his eyes. "Do you remember that summer at the lake?" he asked. "The four of us." I smiled, "Of course. You and Greg tried to outfish each other all week, and you read by the water the whole time," he said, smiling back. "You were always there when I came back from the boat." A warmth spread through my chest. "I didn't know you noticed." I noticed everything. I didn't know what to say. It felt like taking a step into a fog, not knowing where it would lead. "I'm not asking for anything, Caroline," he said softly, "but if you ever need someone to talk to who remembers who you really are, I'm here." That broke something open inside me. I wanted someone to remember the person I was before I became invisible, even to myself. We sat a while longer, and when he left, he just squeezed my hand and gave me a look that said more than words could. When he was gone, I stood in the quiet house with my hand on my chest. My heart was still beating, but it felt different. The next few days were strange. My life looked the same, but it felt different, like someone had moved all the furniture just a little. Greg came home 2 days later, kissed me, and acted like nothing had changed. But I had. I started to see things I hadn't before, like how Greg never really looked at me when we talked, and how we didn't really laugh together anymore. I didn't blame him. We had just drifted apart. Mike didn't text me and I didn't text him. I needed time to think. On Friday, Greg had a work dinner. I said I didn't mind, but when he left, the house felt empty and sad again. I sat on the porch with a glass of wine, and before I could stop myself, I texted Mike, "Are you awake? Yeah? Everything okay?" I paused, then wrote, "I don't know. Can you come over?" When he got there, he knocked softly on the back door. "I'm sorry," I whispered as I let him in. "You don't have to be." We sat on the porch in the quiet. "I can't stop thinking about what you said," I told him. "That you saw me? I meant it." He nodded. We didn't touch. The space between us was warm but careful. "What if I told you I felt something that day in the kitchen?" I asked, my voice shaking a little. He looked right at me. I'd say I did too. That simple truth hung there between us. "But we can't, Mike. I'm married, I know," he said. "I'm not asking you to hurt your life. I just want you to know you aren't alone." "I feel selfish for needing that," I said. "It's not selfish to want." To be seen, his words were like a fog clearing. He gently reached out and brushed a piece of hair from my face. It was a kind, tender touch that made my breath catch. I didn't kiss him, and he didn't try to kiss me. But as he stood up to leave, he said, "Caroline, whatever happens, promise me you won't let yourself disappear again." Then he was gone, and I was alone, with a big question I didn't know how to answer. The next morning, everything was the same, but I wasn't. The whole house felt fragile. Greg and I ate breakfast together. He was looking at his phone. "You okay?" I asked. He looked up, surprised. "Yeah, just a funny text." "I'm thinking," I said. He raised his eyebrows. "About what?" I paused. "About us." He put his phone down. "What about us?" And there it was. I looked at the man I had spent my life with, a man I cared for, but the warmth was gone. "I don't think we talk anymore," I said softly. "Not about anything important." "Where is this coming from?" he asked. "I don't know. I feel lost, like I'm living someone else's life, and it just feels empty." He sighed. "You're right. I felt it too." That surprised me. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I didn't know how to fix it," he admitted. "We got so busy with life we forgot about each other." "Someone made me realize it," I said. Nothing happened, but he made me feel seen, and it scared me. Greg looked at me for a long time. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. "I don't want to lose you, Caroline," he said. "If you're hurting, I want to help." Tears came to my eyes, not because everything was fixed, but because he was trying. We talked for hours that day, honestly. For the first time in a long time, it wasn't a miracle, just two people choosing to try again. Later that evening, I stood by the kitchen window and thought of Mike. I almost picked up my phone, but then I put it down and went outside. I whispered into the darkness, knowing he couldn't hear me. Thank you for waking me up. Because what Mike had done wasn't about an affair or breaking rules. It was about reminding me that I was still here, and that I was worth seeing. And that reminder changed everything.